Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we've got the Moza AB6 force feedback flight stick in for review, and I've been really excited to check this one out. In short, it's the more affordable little brother to the Moza AB9, which is arguably one of the best flight sticks you can buy right now. But the AB9 is expensive. Just the base, that means no desk mount, no stick to go on top. Just the base is £549 here in the UK. Adding a desk mount, adding a stick to go on top could easily see the total cost of ownership going up significantly from there. By contrast, the AB6 comes with a desk mount. It comes with Moza's new MHG flight stick, all for $399. To give you all a little bit of context, earlier this year Moza sent me out their AB9, and long story short, I was blown away. Mostly because of its versatility. With a single click in the Moza cockpit software, you can load in different profiles that make it feel like you're flying a completely different aircraft. Now, as somebody that mostly flies Airbus, I was initially quite skeptical about using a force feedback stick at all because, of course, in the real Airbus, their side sticks do not have force feedback. They use a sprung mechanism and that feeds directly into the plane's fly-by-wire system. But what the AB9's motors do really well is to replicate that resistance to recreate the feel of an Airbus spring-loaded side stick. And honestly, it nails it. I was especially lucky because the week before the AB9 arrived, I visited Infinity Simwings near Gatwick to try their new A320 simulator, and I spent most of that session focusing on how their side stick felt. Then, a week later, I was shocked at how close the AB9 came to replicating that at home. That realism was pushed even further by V1 Simulations and his community, who have been creating custom Airbus profiles for the AB9. Moza provides their own Airbus profile, but frankly, the one from V1 just feels so much closer to what I experienced at Gatwick. It's very good. Immediately then, the AB9 became my daily driver. I even built a DIY Airbus-style pedestal for it. I then 3D printed a custom bracket that mounts to the AB9 so my blue rubber gator can clip in nicely to it, and paired with my FS Project side stick grip, it's absolutely amazing and I completely adore it. But as we said, there is one catch, the price. The AB9 alone here in the UK is £549. Add in a stick to go on top, add in some kind of desk mount, and the cost very quickly goes up from there. And that's where the AB6 for me is so interesting, because we've got the base, we've got the stick, and we've got a desk mount, all for $399 here in the UK. The question I want to answer today is, could the AB6 be enough for most simmers, especially Airbus simmers? After all, when we're flying Airbus with the AB9, it's not like we're wrestling against heavy forces like we're in a Warbird or a GA aircraft. We're just using it to recreate the feel of a simple spring. Very successfully, I might add. So, in light of that, as Airbus simmers, are we leaving a lot of the AB9's potential on the table? And therefore, could the AB6 be the smarter and more affordable choice? Before we find out though, checking my analytics, and a whopping 72.8% of you watching aren't subscribed. We're trying to hit 30k subs on the channel, and I really would appreciate any help you can give us to get us there. So go on, hit the sub button, you know you're worth it. Anyway, begging for subs done and dusted, let's get on to my first impressions. The AB6 is noticeably smaller than the AB9, and it comes with 8 buttons on top and 2 throttle sliders built in directly into the base. If you already own a throttle, you'll probably not use these at all, but it's nice that they're there. They're handy extras and they don't do any harm. The area of movement is also smaller on the AB6, though I can't see that being a massive issue, as during normal flight on the AB9, I don't think I've ever come anywhere near close to the extremities when flying the Airbus. The stick that comes bundled is the new right-handed MHG military grip, and it is absolutely packed with controls. 4 buttons, 3 5-way switches, a 3-way switch, a hat switch, even a Z-axis for the twist rudder that's built directly into the stick. Moza says it's made from reinforced carbon fiber composite. In the hand, it feels like a very solid plastic. Not cheap at all, but definitely plastic. Just like with the AB9, the stick connects with a PS2 style connector and then screws down to secure nicely. Of course, you're not limited to the MHG stick that comes with it. I've also attached the Moza MA3X side stick that they sent with the AB9 originally. I've also connected my stick from FS Projects as well, so you've got options. Personally though, I wish Moza would have bundled the Airbus style MA3X grip with the AB6, or at least give you the option to choose which grip comes in the box, as not everybody flies military, and having more flexibility in the SKUs would make sense in my opinion. And Moza, please give us a left-handed version of the MA3X stick, please. We need to talk about the included desk mount. I know it's just a boring desk mount, but honestly, this thing is excellent. One of the problems I had with the AB9 when I first set it up was the ergonomics. When I mounted it directly to the desk, it sat kind of too high and too far away from me, which meant that I'd pull slightly to the right every time I flared, leading to some less than graceful landings. With the AB6's mount, the stick sits way lower and further away from the edge of the desk, which puts it much closer to the real Airbus position. Side by side with my custom Airbus pedestal that I built, the ergonomics are surprisingly similar. I'd love to mount the AB9 in this way too, but I think it's just too big and too heavy to hang off the desk in the same way, hence I went down the pedestal route. Now, on to the big question, the force feedback. The AB6 delivers up to 6 Newton meters of torque, half that of the AB9's 12 Newton meters of torque. But as Airbus flyers, how much of that torque are we really using to recreate the feel of a spring? Maybe then the 6 Newton meters that the AB6 offers is already more than enough. What's immediately obvious is that the AB6 feels different to the AB9. I strongly suspect it comes down to the force feedback system itself. If you've ever looked into racing wheels, you'll know the difference between belt-driven and gear-driven force feedback. The AB9 feels like it's a belt-driven system, kind of smooth and seamless. The AB6, on the other hand, feels like it's gear-driven. Now, I own a gear-driven force feedback racing wheel, and the AB6 feels very similar. You can sometimes sense the gears as you make small adjustments, almost like a grindy, tickly sensation, and you can hear it too. Look, listen. By contrast, the AB9 is buttery smooth with no hint of notches. Given the AB6's mid-range positioning, this all makes sense. Gear drives are cheaper to implement, and honestly, once you're flying, you stop noticing the notches most of the time. But the real question is whether the gear-driven feel becomes distracting during those tiny, precise corrections we make on final approach. So, let's fire up the sim and find out. Okay, we are in the cockpit of the minibus, aka the Airbus A319 from Fenix, in the gorgeous new 2024 refreshed Airnaut livery. Go grab yours today at airnaut.co.uk. We're on final into Cologne, Germany, with a bit of a crosswind, which is perfect for putting the AB6 through its paces. The good news is that V1 Simulation's Airbus profile, which I've been using for the AB9, also seems to work on the AB6. You can grab it from his Discord if you're curious. Now, with both sticks running the same profile, does the AB6 feel a little bit lighter in the hand than the AB9? Maybe. I've swapped between the two so many times during this review process that I can't tell if it's real or if it's just in my head. Either way, it's not a big deal. As if, as a community, we do decide that maybe the AB6 does feel a touch lighter than the AB9, there's plenty of headroom in the Moza cockpit software to tighten things up a little bit. And it's that software, the Moza cockpit software, that it really feels like Moza's secret weapon. It is incredibly powerful. One click and your stick can go from feeling like an Airbus to a rattly old Cessna to a helicopter, even some kind of warbird. And even though the AB6's motors are half as powerful as the AB9, trust me, it still packs a punch. Add in community-made profiles like the one from V1 Simulations for the Airbus, and you've got a whole level of accuracy and customization that's really hard to beat. Coming into land now, and I will say that the finer movements do feel different to what I've become used to with the AB9. Now, the AB9 has a belt-driven force feedback system and it feels silky smooth, whereas with the AB6 you can notice a certain notchiness in its movement due to its gear-based force feedback system. Not so much during bigger movements, such as when you pull to rotate, but if you're doing kind of teeny tiny movements like you would do on final approach, you can almost feel the teeth of the gears. I found that I was living in the first 2 or 3 notches, either to the left or to the right, when I was on final approach, as I was kind of weaving my way down. If I went beyond that, it was kind of like a signal to me that I was perhaps overcorrecting, almost kind of handy as an indicator of how I was doing, but ultimately it does take away from the immersion if you're going after a hyper-realistic Airbus experience. During larger, quicker stick movements, the notchy feeling wasn't as noticeable. For example, during pulling back during rotation, I could almost imagine that if you were dogfighting in a fighter jet, it would also be less noticeable than it is on final approach in an Airbus. So is it a deal breaker? No, but you should be aware of it, and you might want to consider which type of aircraft you fly and the style of flying you undertake when making your decision whether you're going to go for the AB6 or maybe you're going to spend the extra and go for the AB9. We also have to keep in mind the price. Yes, £399 is a good chunk of change for any flight sim peripheral, but keep in mind you're getting the AB6 base, you're getting the MHG grip, and you're getting a very impressive desk mount, all included, one and done, which I think is quite a good deal, particularly when you compare to the AB9, where the base on its own is £549 here in the UK. Add in a desk mount, add in a stick, and depending on what stick you choose, you could easily be approaching or be even north of £700. So is the AB9 the better unit? Well, of course it is. It's smoother, it's stronger, and it's more refined, but it's also far more expensive, so you have to keep that in mind. What Moza have done with the AB6 is distill a lot of that AB9 magic into a much more affordable, much more accessible package, which has got to be a good thing in my opinion. That said, I would still love to see Moza give us more flexibility with the SKUs that it offers. For example, sell the AB6 base with just the desk mount at a lower price and then let the customers choose their grip, or maybe bundle it with the MA3X Airbus style grip for those of us that like to live in the Airbus. So, over to you. What do you think? Leave all your thoughts below in the comments. Also, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them there. If I can, I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't, I'll try and find someone at Moza who can answer your questions. Links are in the description, of course, if you want to learn more. If you found the video useful, leaving a like really helps the channel and the video a ton, so I'd super appreciate that. And get subbed so you don't miss any future content or live streams. But until next time, you all look after yourselves, be good to each other, and as always, happy flying.